There comes a moment in every parent's journey when the relationship with your children begins to transform. After years of being their guiding light, their foundation, their constant support, something shifts. Perhaps you notice they're tuning out when you speak. Maybe they're making decisions without seeking your input. Or worse, they've started speaking to you with a tone that makes you feel diminished, outdated, or like you're simply in their way. And it cuts deep. If you've felt your adult children pulling away, treating you with less consideration than you deserve, you might feel a mixture of hurt, confusion, and even resentment. The temptation to remind them of all your sacrifices, all those sleepless nights, all the times you put them first, it can be overwhelming. But here's what experience has taught us. Confrontation rarely bridges this gap. In fact, it often widens it. Today, I'm sharing 6 powerful approaches that can help you regain your standing when your adult children have stopped valuing your voice. These aren't quick fixes. They're thoughtful shifts in how you engage that can fundamentally change how they perceive you. Some might challenge your instincts, but if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover how to reclaim your place as a respected, essential presence in their lives, without a single heated word. Approach 1. Release the need for their validation. One of the most counterintuitive truths about parent-child relationships is this: the more desperately you seek their approval, the less likely you are to receive it. Perhaps you recognize this pattern in yourself. You rearrange your schedule whenever they call. You withhold opinions that might create tension. You offer help before they ask, hoping that your availability will translate into appreciation. But instead of drawing them closer, this pattern often pushes them further away. The hard reality is that respect isn't gained through constant accommodation, it's established through self-respect. I remember Eleanor, a vibrant woman who had raised 3 successful children. As they built their adult lives, she found herself increasingly trying to stay relevant in their world. She would apologize for having different opinions, change plans at a moment's notice if they needed something, and silence her own needs to avoid being seen as difficult. "I just want to be part of their lives," she confided. But her children had begun treating her like an afterthought, consulting her last, if at all. The turning point came when Eleanor realized a profound truth. By diminishing herself, she was showing her children that she didn't expect to be treated as an equal. She was teaching them that her thoughts, her time, and her presence were less valuable than theirs. If your children don't respect your voice, the first step isn't to demand their attention, it's to stop acting as though you need it. Express your thoughts clearly, without apology. Maintain your plans unless there's a genuine emergency. Value your own perspective, even when it differs from theirs. Because when you begin honoring your own voice, they'll notice. And gradually, they'll start listening. Approach 2. Embody wisdom. Don't insist upon it. When you feel dismissed or overlooked by your children, your instinct might be to assert yourself, to remind them of your experience, to highlight their mistakes, to insist that they acknowledge what you bring to the table. But this approach almost universally backfires. Think about it. Has anyone ever argued their way into your respect? Has someone ever demanded your admiration and successfully received it? True respect isn't won through confrontation. It's earned through consistent demonstration of the qualities that command admiration. I knew a gentleman named Thomas, a retired professor who had spent decades shaping young minds. Yet at family gatherings, his adult children would routinely talk over him, dismiss his observations, or exchange knowing glances when he offered suggestions. Initially, Thomas responded by raising his voice, citing his credentials, reminding them of times his advice had proven correct. The result? They withdrew further, seeing his reactions as evidence that he was becoming difficult or sensitive with age. Then Thomas changed course. Instead of demanding to be heard, he began listening with genuine curiosity. When he did speak, he did so thoughtfully, without defensiveness. He stopped treating every interaction as a chance to prove his relevance. Gradually, his children's perception shifted. They started seeking his perspective, not because he insisted upon it, but because his calm confidence and genuine interest in understanding before being understood reminded them of the wisdom he embodied. If your children don't respect your input, don't try to force recognition. Instead, demonstrate what respectful communication looks like. Speak with measured confidence. Listen fully before responding. And most importantly, maintain your dignity regardless of how they initially receive you. Because respect isn't something you can extract from others. It's something you inspire by how you carry yourself through difficult moments. If you're finding value in these insights, please comment "Wisdom" below to join our conversation. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss future videos. Your engagement helps our community grow stronger. Approach 3. Cultivate independence, not isolation. As parents age, one of the most difficult transitions involves redefining your emotional relationship with your children. After decades of deep connection, of being their safe harbor, it's natural to look to them for emotional fulfillment. You may find yourself waiting for their calls, hoping for their visits, needing their acknowledgement to feel valued. But here's a truth that may be difficult to hear. When your emotional well-being becomes your children's responsibility, the relationship often suffers. People, even those who love you deeply, tend to respect those who maintain emotional self-sufficiency. When they sense that your happiness depends entirely on their attention, it creates an unspoken pressure. Rather than feeling drawn to you, they may begin pulling away, seeing interactions as obligations rather than connections. Margaret's story illustrates this perfectly. After her husband passed, her 3 adult children became the center of her emotional world. She called them daily, expressed disappointment when they couldn't visit, and unintentionally made them feel responsible for her happiness. "I don't understand," she told me. "I just want to be part of their lives, but they seem to be avoiding me." The breakthrough came when Margaret realized she needed to rebuild her sense of self outside of her identity as their mother. She reconnected with old friends, joined a community garden, and began taking watercolor classes, something she'd always wanted to explore. A remarkable transformation followed. As her life filled with meaningful activities and relationships, her children began reaching out more frequently. Their conversations became richer, focused on genuine connection rather than obligation. They started seeing her as a whole person with a full life, not just as a parent waiting for their attention. The lesson here isn't about creating distance, it's about creating balance. When you develop a rich, fulfilling life independent of your children's involvement, you paradoxically create more space for authentic connection. They begin to see you as someone they want to connect with, not someone they need to take care of. Approach 4. Establish clear parameters of respect. One of the most fundamental reasons adult children may begin treating parents dismissively is simple: they've learned they can. Not because they don't love you, not because they're deliberately disrespectful, but because over time, the boundaries of acceptable behavior have gradually eroded. Setting boundaries doesn't mean creating walls. It means clearly defining what kind of interaction honors both parties. It means having the courage to address disrespect when it occurs, not by escalating conflict, but by calmly naming what's happening and expressing what you need instead. Consider Joseph's experience. A retired business owner who had commanded respect throughout his career, he found himself increasingly marginalized in family discussions. His suggestions were routinely dismissed, his experiences discounted as outdated, his preferences overlooked when making family plans. "I kept telling myself it wasn't worth making waves," he admitted. "But every time I stayed silent, I felt a little smaller." Joseph's turning point came during a family dinner when his son interrupted him mid-sentence for the third time. Instead of withdrawing or becoming angry, Joseph simply said, "I'd like to finish my thought before we move on." When his daughter later dismissed a concern he'd raised, he responded evenly, "We may see this differently, but I'm asking you to consider my perspective with the same respect I've shown yours." These weren't dramatic confrontations, they were calm assertions of his expectation for mutual respect. Initially, his children seemed surprised, even slightly defensive. But over time, a new pattern emerged. They began listening more attentively, acknowledging his input even when they disagreed, and modeling this same respect for their own children. If you've allowed disrespectful patterns to become normalized, changing them requires courage and consistency. When boundaries are crossed, name it simply without accusation. "I notice I'm being interrupted, and I'd like to finish speaking." That comment felt dismissive, and I'd prefer we discuss this respectfully. "I understand we disagree, but speaking to me in that tone isn't acceptable." Remember that boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about clarifying what you will and won't participate in. And when you demonstrate that you value yourself enough to require respectful treatment, others will begin to value you more as well. If you're continuing to find these insights helpful, please comment "boundaries" below. Your engagement helps our community grow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on establishing respectful parameters in family relationships. Approach 5. Recalibrate your giving. There's a delicate truth about human nature that applies especially to family relationships. Consistent, unacknowledged giving eventually becomes expected rather than appreciated. As parents, this dynamic can emerge almost imperceptibly. You offer help without being asked, provide financial support without conditions, make yourself constantly available, not to receive thanks, but because caring for your children is woven into your identity. But when generosity flows only one way without recognition, something shifts. What began as giving from the heart can transform into an uneven exchange where your contributions become invisible. Simply what's expected of you as a parent, regardless of your age or circumstances. I recall David's situation vividly. A widower in his 70s, he had remained the family problem solver long after his children had established their own households. He watched their pets when they traveled, provided interest-free loans when they faced financial challenges, and rearranged his schedule whenever they needed childcare support. Yet when David needed help, when he had surgery and required assistance during recovery, his children visited briefly but quickly returned to their busy lives, leaving him to manage largely on his own. "I don't want to be bitter," he shared, "but I can't help feeling like they only value what I can do for them, not who I am to them." The transformation began when David started practicing what he called thoughtful availability, rather than unlimited access. He began considering his own needs before automatically saying yes. He started asking directly for help when he needed it, rather than hoping they would notice. And most significantly, he began acknowledging when their requests felt one-sided. "I notice I've helped with childcare 3 weekends this month," he told his daughter one day, "but when I asked for help moving furniture last week, you were too busy. I'm wondering if we need to find more balance in how we support each other." This wasn't about scorekeeping or withdrawing care. It was about creating awareness and inviting reciprocity. Over time, his children began recognizing his contributions more explicitly. They started checking on his needs rather than just presenting their own. And perhaps most importantly, they began modeling this balanced giving for their own children. If you feel your generosity has become expected rather than valued, consider adjusting the flow. This doesn't mean shutting down your natural desire to give, but rather bringing consciousness to the exchange. Let your giving be thoughtful rather than automatic. Create space for them to give in return. And when appropriate, gently name the imbalance when it persists. Because true family connection thrives on mutual care, not one-way sacrifice. Approach 6. Become the author of your third act. Perhaps the most transformative way to shift how your adult children perceive you is to re-envision how you perceive yourself. Many parents, particularly after retirement or as they age, unconsciously narrow their identity to primarily being mom or dad, orienting their schedule, interests, and conversation around their children's lives. While family connection remains precious, defining yourself primarily through your relationship to your children can inadvertently diminish how they see you. People naturally respect those who continue growing, learning, and engaging with life on their own terms. Helen's journey illustrates this beautifully. After decades as a devoted mother, she found herself increasingly sidelined in her children's busy lives. Family gatherings revolved around her grandchildren, which she treasured, but she noticed her opinions on anything beyond family matters were often politely dismissed. "It's like they see me as just grandma," she confided, "as if that's all I've ever been or could be." Everything shifted when Helen rediscovered her passion for social advocacy, something she had set aside during her parenting years. She joined a community organization, began writing letters to local officials about issues that mattered to her, and eventually started a small neighborhood initiative addressing food insecurity among seniors. The first change she noticed was in her own energy and sense of purpose. But soon after, she observed a shift in how her children engaged with her. They began asking about her projects, valuing her insights on current events, and seeing dimensions of her they had never fully appreciated. "They introduce me differently now," Helen noted with satisfaction. "Not just as their mom, but as someone making a difference in her own right." If your children have begun treating you as though your relevance is fading, the most powerful response isn't to convince them otherwise. It's to prove it to yourself. Pursue interests that energize you. Develop new skills. Nurture friendships independent of your family connections. Engage with your community in meaningful ways. Because when you demonstrate that you're actively writing an engaging third act of your life story, your children will naturally want to read along, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect for the vibrant, evolving person you continue to become. If you've stayed with me throughout this reflection and found it valuable, please comment "Purpose" below. Your engagement helps our community thrive, and I'd love to hear about the ways you're creating meaning in this important life stage. The journey of parenting never truly ends. It simply evolves into new forms requiring different wisdom. When the children you've guided begin to distance themselves or dismiss your voice, the natural response might be hurt, frustration, or even withdrawal. But as we've explored today, reclaiming mutual respect doesn't happen through confrontation or demand. Instead, it emerges through subtle but powerful shifts in how you engage with yourself and with them. By releasing the need for their validation, you paradoxically become more worthy of it. By embodying wisdom rather than insisting upon it, you make your guidance more compelling. By cultivating independence without isolation, you create space for more authentic connection. When you establish clear parameters of respect, recalibrate your giving, and become the author of your own third act, something remarkable happens. Your children begin seeing you not just as their parent, although that bond remains precious, but as a whole person deserving of consideration, attention, and respect. This transition isn't always easy. It may require letting go of familiar patterns and expectations. It may mean experiencing some discomfort as new boundaries are tested. But the reward is a relationship that evolves from obligation into choice, where your children engage with you not because they should, but because they genuinely value who you are and what you bring to their lives. Thank you for joining me in this reflection today. I'd love to hear your experiences. What resonated with you? What approach might you try first? Your perspective enriches our community, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in today's video, please consider subscribing and sharing it with others who might benefit. Your support allows us to continue creating content that honors the wisdom that comes with age and the relationships that give life meaning. Remember that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you inspire through how you honor yourself and others. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you love.